Good morning and welcome to our virtual Senior Caucus meeting at the CDP Endorsing Convention. You'll notice in the chat that we have placed the link to our code of conduct, and I'm expecting that all of us will adhere to them. I'm going to keep my comments very brief this morning because our agenda is tightly packed. First, I'd like to acknowledge that February was Black History Month and March is Women's History Month, which makes it so fitting that the first woman of color has been nominated to be a Supreme Court justice. Americans of every background, color, and gender believe in the sacred promise of equal justice under the law. With the nomination of Honorable Ketanji Brown Jackson, we are taking a step towards making our justice system one that respects and reflects the very best of every kind of American. She will make history when she is confirmed. And most of us, no matter our color or country, value our freedom. But today, authoritarians around the world are trying to seize power by peddling lies and deploying violence. While Putin bombs Ukraine, the MAGA factions cheer on war and push bills to silence our voices and censor our history. Every elected leader must answer, which side are you on? The many standing up for freedom or the powerful few who launch invasion and incite insurrection to rule over us? Freedom requires standing with the people of Ukraine and standing for an America where each and every one of us can thrive and make our voices heard, no exceptions. It's imperative to remember that the same GOP politicians now cheering on Putin's war have pushed bills to sabotage our elections, deny our freedom to vote, and censor the truth of our past so that they control our future. And that's why it's so important that we use this weekend to support the Democrats who have come forward to serve as our elected representatives. Let's not take our ability to vote this weekend and in June and in November for granted. So once again, thanks for being here. And I'd like to turn the meeting, we'll turn the meeting over to Howard, who is going to share he's our secretary, and he'll be sharing about the minutes from the November e-board.
And Ruth, the Lieutenant Governor has arrived.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor, Madam Chair.
Howard?
Okay.
Do you want to give your report?
Okay. The minutes are, I think, on the screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, if everyone take a look at the minutes were also on the meeting invitation that everyone got. So I hope everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes. The minutes are an example of what our meetings are all about. And one of the things that has kept me sane during this pandemic as a senior citizen of 75 has been the Senior Caucus and the outstanding meetings we have had, as well as the wonderful meetings the e-board has had. So I just encourage everyone to join us. So if everyone could take a look at the minutes, and I'll let our Lieutenant Governor know that I am Hungarian. My last name comes from the city of Agar, just to let you know that. And it's in the area of Ukraine. So are there any corrections to our minutes? Okay, so Madam Chair.
If you have any corrections, please raise your virtual hand. I do not see any hands, so I entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
This is Dottie Smith. This is Dottie Smith, and I approve.
Okay. Without, if I hear any of, great, thanks, Angelica. Okay, without objection, I don't hear any. I'd like to consider the minutes approved by acclamation. And I'd like to welcome Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, who has a few words of welcome for us.
Well, thank you so much, Ruth. It's just wonderful to be here with all of you. And Mr. Secretary, Agar is one of my favorite places in that part of the world. Just so incredibly beautiful with excellent wine. So it's just terrific to be here with all of you. Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here to say a few words as you open up your Senior Caucus meeting here today. You know, the seniors over the last 2 years have really had a lot to contend with during the COVID-19 crisis. From the very beginning, the inability to see family, the real fear factor for seniors, you know, as well as people with who are immunocompromised, but really especially for seniors. It took a toll, and seeing the resiliency of the seniors in California, and in particular, the leadership of those in the Democratic Caucus, teaching each other how to use technology, figuring out how to just improve those skills and help one another. But of course, then there was also the cost to society of not having our seniors out there as our super volunteers. One of the things that that came across my desk is this question of, can we use students in the CSUs, the UCs, community colleges to come in and backfill in food banks and in doing other kind of service work, because we needed to ensure that our seniors stayed you know, sheltering in place and at home, and that left a really big gap. And boy, it really comes to show the important work that our seniors do. Again, not just those of you here who are super engaged in your community activism, but across the state. So it's great to be, by and large, transitioning from pandemic to endemic. And I certainly look forward to when we're all going to be able to come together and meet in person. But meanwhile, the work of the state goes on. As your Lieutenant Governor, I spend a lot of time working with students in public higher education to ensure that those kids have as much or more opportunity as your generation and my generation, and of course continue to make our state strong. The last 2 years, we've had these enormous budget surpluses. As you know, the governor has worked hard to expand access to Medicare. Medi-Cal has worked hard to make sure that those who couldn't pay their rent over the last year were given rental assistance. Of course, the Golden State stimulus, which helped people as well. There's still a lot of work to do, though. Rising inflation, rising cost of living impacts people on fixed income. We really need to look at that growing income gap and rising cost of living, and make sure that we're doing everything possible to make sure that those who have been in California for most of their lives or all of their lives and have no intention of leaving are still able to keep their quality of life and enjoy retirement and living in this beautiful state. The one other thing I might just add is that 3 years ago, three and a half years ago, when the governor and I were both sworn in, he asked me to serve as California's representative for international affairs and trade. I have been very honored to play this role. 1 out of 5 jobs in our state comes from international trade and tourism. And I spent a lot of time working with our ports, working with members of the Consular Corps, and from time to time helping and advising the governor in what the state can do to make sure that our voice is heard in critical ways in the international stage. I just was 2 days ago down in Fresno with the California National Guard. We have a partnership program with Ukraine and you know, so many things that California does that are important for our country that don't always make a lot of headlines, but are important. And so I'm very proud to have been sort of deputized by the governor to serve in this capacity. And then finally, I know the Senior Caucus cares a great deal about the environment and passing on the best possible environment to the next generation. And climate change is something that I have been very proud to work on, both as a member of the State Lands Commission, but also the governor, you may have seen, sent me to represent him, the state of California, and lead the California delegation in Glasgow at COP26. So I am working hard to represent all of you, to do the important work that the people of California elected me to do. I would be remiss if I didn't humbly ask you all for your vote. I will be on the ballot tomorrow for the endorsement of the CDP. I'd be very honored and proud to have your support. CDP helped me win. I never run for office before, and I received more than 1,000 votes in my 2018 campaign, and would be really honored to have your support again this time. So I'm going to pass it back to you. I know you have a long agenda. I loved hearing from the secretary that these meetings have kept you all strong, that the camaraderie and the partnership and the community that you build through your party engagement is fulfilling, because it certainly is important. So thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to seeing you all in person soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. And as we've all mentioned, we have a really full agenda. So I'm going to move on to our next speaker. And it's my great pleasure to introduce my state senator, the new majority leader in the state Senate, and someone whose energy is incomparable. So Senator Mike McGuire, would you please let us know that you're here?
Hey, good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Democrats. How's everybody doing? I'm so grateful to be waking up with you and coming to you live today from the northernmost point here in the Golden State in beautiful Del Norte County. And I want to say thank you. Thank you to our amazing Senior Caucus chair. If we can give it up loud and proud right now for Ms. Ruth Carter, everybody. Because of her leadership, because of your leadership, the Senior Caucus is one of the most influential here in the entire CDP. And you put your energy for good. You work for good across this party and across this state. And we owe you all a debt of gratitude. And let's just be honest. Right now, as we head into election season, we don't need Democrats with a big mouth. We need Democrats right now with a stiff backbone. And I hope that you are with me. We need Democrats with a stiff backbone, not talking about single payer healthcare. We need to pass healthcare for every Californian. And I hope we get this bill under the governor's desk this year. We have to stop taking checks from big oil and talking big about climate change. And this year, the state Senate will be passing the boldest climate action plan that this state has seen in 50 years. I hope that you're with me, Democrats. When we pass affordable housing legislation and budget for affordable housing, we need direct set-asides for older Californians once and for all. We need to build additional affordable housing for seniors in every corner of this great state. In California needs to stand strong right now for Ukraine. We need to talk about how we can help those who are being inundated by this war of an autocratic thug of Putin. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. We have the largest pension system in the United States of America. And we have $2 billion in assets in Russian-controlled corporations and funds. And that's why we're bringing forward legislation that will immediately divest all state funds out of the Russian economy. It will block any future state investments in Russia, and it calls on all California corporations to divest their interests in the Putin economy as well. Nearly half of the legislature, Democrats and Republicans, are backing this. And when Democrats lead, we are going to succeed. I hope that you're with me, Senior Caucus. And I'm going to end it right here, Madam Chair, and say this. This is an endorsement convention. It is time to flex that Senior Caucus muscle and stand strong for democratic values as you do year in and year out. We need to keep California solidly blue. We need to push state leaders past there. We need to expand our Democratic majorities in Congress. And I hope that you are with me. We need to continue to mobilize to keep Donald friggin' Trump out of office here in 2 years. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful to be with you, and thank you for your amazing leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That was, your energy is just so
Contagious.
contagious. That's the word I was looking for. So thank you. Yes, yes, yes. And moving on, let's go to Dr. Bill Honigman.
Oh, thank you. Ruth, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I have the honor to introduce a colleague, Dr. Anna Malinow, who will speak to us. She is a retired professor of pediatrics from the University of California, San Francisco, past president of Physicians for National Health Program, and a lead organizer for the National Single Payer Steering Committee. An immigrant from Latin America, she has dedicated her career to caring for underserved immigrant and refugee children in Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh, and has spent decades organizing activists across the country for a national single-payer health program, including co-founding Healthcare for All Texas, Doctors for Change, the Pittsburgh chapter of Physicians for National Health Program, and most recently, National Single Payer and the movement to end privatization of Medicare. She has been a featured speaker in local, national, and international media on the U.S. healthcare system. Dr. Malinow, thank you so much for being with us today. You have the floor.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Dr. Bill. Let me share my screen so that we can get going. Here we go. And we will start the presentation. Great. I'm going to pull that up. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Bill, for that kind introduction. It's such an honor for me to be here today to speak with you about Medicare direct contracting and its new name, ACO REACH, the further privatization of Medicare, and the threat that it poses to seniors. So this is an article that was published by Pearl Health, a DCE out of New York City, as a response to an interview that I had with Tom Hartman late last year, where they write, "There is no plot to privatize Medicare." They further write, "Direct contracting isn't privatizing Medicare. It employs public-private partnerships to improve Medicare. This type of partnership can and should coexist with goals around Medicare for all." Well, I hope to spend the next 15 minutes or so showing you how, in fact, there is a plot to privatize Medicare, and here's how. The definition of privatization is the transfer of control over public goods into private hands. Now, this is what the Medicare pie looked like before 2003, and you can see that a very small minority, a small slice, 5 million individuals, had chosen privatized Medicare plus choice, which is what Medicare Advantage used to be called before 2003, and the rest, the vast majority, chose to stay on public traditional fee-for-service Medicare, where they have the Part A and Part B, as well as the supplemental plan. Now, fast forward to 2021, and you can see that privatized Medicare Advantage has ballooned out to 27 million individuals. Practically half of the Medicare beneficiaries are on privatized Medicare Advantage, while the rest still choose to remain on public traditional fee-for-service Medicare. Now, this is a slice of the pie that we're going to be talking about today, that golden slice of the pie that is under threat from Wall Street today. Now, the total Medicare budget for 2021 was almost $1 trillion. So you can understand why it is that the government has a huge incentive to try to keep costs down, but it also poses a huge incentive for Wall Street to try to siphon off all those public funds for themselves. So what is traditional Medicare? Remember that golden slice of the pie? Well, that's when the patient goes to the doctor bills Medicare, and Medicare pays the doctor directly. Very straightforward relationship. Now, under Medicare direct contracting, however, Medicare pays a set amount monthly to the direct contracting entity to share risks and manage the patient's care. So that means that this entity is receiving a lump sum from Medicare every month for every single beneficiary in order to manage and to share the risk of that patient. So it inserts this middleman to manage care in order to control costs. I've never known a middleman to control costs, but at any rate, that's the hope. Now, my guess is that many of you have not heard about direct contracting. That's because it's an under-the-radar program under the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, also known as CMMI. And my guess is that many of you have probably never heard of CMMI either. So let's find out where in the government the CMMI is. So you start with President Biden, who appoints the Secretary for Health and Human Services to run the nation's healthcare system, and he appointed Xavier Becerra to be secretary to oversee the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, also known as CMS, to manage Medicare. Now they oversee the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, also known as the CMMI, which was created under the Affordable Care Act in 2010 to foster healthcare transformation by finding new ways to pay for and deliver care that can lower costs and improve care. So that's a mouthful. So basically what it is that their mission, they were created to develop models or experiments basically that would control costs and improve care. And they were given broad authority by the Affordable Care Act to scale up any model to all of Medicare without congressional approval or oversight. So now that we know where the CMMI sits in government, and we know that it was the CMMI that created this model called direct contracting, let's find out who it is that created direct contracting in the CMMI. Well, for that, we have to look to Adam Boehler, who is the former CEO and founder of Landmark Health. And he was appointed by President Trump to run CMMI in 2018, where he developed direct contracting. And interestingly, Landmark Health quickly became one of the first DCEs to contract with Medicare. Now, I like to think of the direct contracting program like Monopoly, and you have to start at the very top with Oxyon Venture Capital, which is a venture capital firm that backs healthcare groups, including Landmark Health when Boehler was the CEO and founder. Now, when Adam Boehler was appointed director of CMMI in 2018, he called Oxyon Venture Capital to come help him create direct contracting, which they did and launched in 2019. And very quickly, a lot of these DCEs respond that were backed by Oxyon, including Landmark, IR Health, Oak Street, Village MD, Clover DCE, and then many, many others that were not backed by Oxyon Venture Capital, but by many other venture capitals and private equity as well. You can see that there are many, many others. I want you to take notice of Clover Health from the venture capital Oxyon, and then Cano Health. And you can see that there have been many others that have been created. Most of them investor owned, many publicly traded. All of these are direct contracting entities to manage the care of seniors. Now, this was under Trump. So when President Biden came in, did he stop DCEs? Well, unfortunately, he didn't. He appointed Liz Fowler as the director of CMMI, who changed the name. She's becoming pretty good at that, tweaked a few changes, and DCE started in April 2021. There were 53 original DCEs operating in 38 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And virtually any type of company, regardless of healthcare experience, can apply to be a DCE, including commercial insurers and venture capital investors. Applicants are approved without any input from Congress. So let me make sure that everybody understands that that the vast majority of DCEs are investor-owned and publicly traded. So there was a much expected announcement out of the CMMI, which came out last week on the 24th, as to what were they going to do with the DCE model. Were they going to stop it? Were they going to improve it? And basically what happened is that they doubled down on DCEs. They changed the name again and became ACO REACH, which is an acronym that stands for Realizing Equity, Access, and Community Health. They started a new enrollment period, which runs from March through April. And all current DCEs will transition to an ACO REACH December 31st, 2022, and now there are about 100 DCEs. Now they continue the risk-based models that put the middleman to manage the doctors, patients, and risk. They're adding health equity, because why not? And they're targeting historically underserved communities. Now, according to insider analysts, these ACO REACH models are going to be even more lucrative for Wall Street than the DCE model. And let me make this perfectly clear that this ACO REACH has little to nothing to do with ACOs other than the name. These are the accountable care organizations. So to review, we went from traditional Medicare, where Medicare pays doctors and hospitals directly, to a direct contracting model where we inserted a middleman between Medicare and providers. But there is another set of players that are even more important than the DCEs, which are the Wall Street investors who fund these DCEs and now the ACO REACH. They are flooding DCEs with new money. Now, these investors aren't stupid. They only put their money where they expect big profits. So how does a company with a stated goal, remember, of improving care and saving money, make a big enough profit to keep its investors happy? So there are many ways that these DCE, ACO REACH are going to make money. There are two primary ways that we're going to talk about it. One is to maximize the revenue from Medicare. Remember that these DCEs get a lump sum from Medicare for each recipient, for each Medicare beneficiary, right? And so they want to maximize the amount of money that they're getting from Medicare. And then of course, they want to minimize the revenue that is being spent on patient care. So to maximize the amount of money coming in, they're going to take something right out of the Medicare Advantage playbook called upcoding. By making patients look sicker than they are, DCEs REACH get higher monthly payments from Medicare in advance, regardless of how much care patients actually receive. Now, while REACH has guardrails to protect against this, everyone understands the corporations will find ways around them. And the REACH model has new discounts, quality controls, and risk adjustments for REACH, but actually, according to these analysts, they will increase profit and decrease risk for them. So it's actually a boon to Wall Street. Now, to minimize the money going out, DCEs REACH are allowed to keep as profit and overhead what they don't spend on medical services. And this creates a dangerous incentive to ration and restrict care for seniors and people with disabilities. And remember that these financial incentives do not exist in traditional Medicare because there is no middleman there to siphon off profits. So further, DCEs REACH threaten to bankrupt Medicare because if you look at the Medicare pie, only 2% of the healthcare dollar goes to administration under traditional Medicare. Now, under DCEs REACH, up to 40% of that healthcare dollar will go to administration and profit. But the big question is, how do you enroll millions of seniors and people with disabilities into a DCE REACH? Now, remember, these are seniors that specifically chose to stay on traditional Medicare and have rejected Medicare Advantage, right? So you just don't tell them. Up to 36 million seniors and people with disabilities on traditional Medicare will be automatically assigned with a DCE REACH without their knowledge or consent. And how? Through their primary care provider. Because remember, Medicare Advantage is always trying to recruit patients, right? Well, these DCE REACH are going to be recruiting physicians and physician practices. Now, if a beneficiary's doctor is part of a DCE REACH, then CMS will automatically assign that senior to that DCE REACH that the doctor belongs to. Now, the patient is going to get a form letter like this that says, required annual notice, no action needed. These kind of letters just go straight in the bin, straight in the trash for me. But they're being told that their doctor asked, the DCE to help see that you get the right kind of care at the right time. And this constitutes knowledge and consent to CMS. Now, the big question is, can you opt out? And this is a question that I posed to Liz Fowler when we met with her in December. And I said, well, what if a beneficiary if a senior just doesn't want to be in a DCE? And her answer was, find another doctor. Now, let's be completely clear about this, that the aim of the CMMI is to have all Medicare fee-for-service beneficiaries and the vast majority of Medicaid beneficiaries in a care relationship with accountability for quality and total cost of care by 2030. This is out of their website back in October of 2021. This is the transfer of public goods, which are Medicare tax dollars, to private hands Wall Street investors for the total privatization of Medicare. Now, won't Congress try to stop it? Well, until recently, most members of Congress had never heard of direct contracting, and that was until November 30th, when a delegation from Physicians for a National Health Program, including myself there, went to Washington, D.C. with a petition signed by 10,000 individuals, over 10,000 individuals, demanding that Secretary Becerra stop direct contracting entities, but we were denied. We were not able to deliver that to Secretary Becerra. On January 4th, 54 members of Congress sent a letter to Secretary Becerra demanding an end to direct contracting entities. And then on February 4th, Senator Warren had a Senate Finance Committee hearing where she called DCE vultures. There has been a huge pressure campaign from activists all across the country, which has resulted in a frenzy of lobbying in Washington by panicked DCEs. And when progressives unite, the industry scrambles. So nothing makes the industry scramble more than an earnings report that looks like this. The top is Cano Health, the bottom in the black is Clover Health, and those are both DCEs that I mentioned before. And you can see our pressure campaign started there, November 30th. Now, we can't take full credit for the tanking of these stocks. And sadly, trading started to go up after the announcement from CMMI with the new ACO REACH model. So how do we stop direct contracting? Our movement is growing, but we need your help. So for individuals, you can go to our website, you can sign the petition to Secretary Becerra, but importantly, please call your member of Congress, especially if they're in the Congressional Progressive Caucus in the House Ways and Means, or if they sit in the Senate Finance Committee, and set up a meeting to speak about DCE's reach and your concern about this. Now, for every Democratic club in the state of California, please sign our organizational sign-on letter against DCE's reach. We have over 250 organizations that have signed on, and we would love to get more. And you can also copy what the Arizona Democratic Party State Committee did by unanimously passing a resolution to stop the privatization of Medicare by calling for the termination of DCE's reach. And you can also send your own letter to Secretary Becerra, as well as to all the members of Congress in California calling for an end of DCE's reach. So in summary, DC REACH is privatizing Medicare. It's the transfer of public goods into private hands. There is no room for corporate profit in national improved Medicare for all. And if we don't fight now, there won't be any national improved Medicare for all left to fight for. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Malinow. I've noticed in the chat that many people would like to know if they could get a copy of the slideshow that you presented.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to send it to you, Ruth. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Wow. Wow. That was wonderful. I mean, scary, but wonderful. So thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. And keeping within a time limit. That was amazing that you did that. I know you talked fast, but getting all that information in was astounding. And so thanks again, Dr. Malinow, and we're going to move on to get a report from our treasurer. So Angelica, could you please?
Good morning, everyone. I will quickly report on the prior 2001 year. We had a beginning balance of $2,714.22. We had deposits of $4,590 and expenditures, payments of $2,844.63. And so that puts us with our ending balance in 2021, which is our beginning balance this year of $4,459.59.
And thank you. And how many members do we have now?
I do have to make sure that we check on any duplications, but I'm seeing over 600 on my list.
I don't think it's that many. I think it's over 400. So that's good. I don't think it's over 600 though. Yeah, thanks.
Mailing list versus the actual members. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Propose we accept her report.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Oh,
Thanks. Any discussion? So with any objections, if I see no objections, I would be we will accept this with acclamation, vote of acclamation. So thank you very much. And Ralph, you're up.
Okay, well, I have the great pleasure of introducing LA Commissioner Susie Shannon, who is a tireless advocate for homeless and low-income communities and progressive values. And I'm so happy that Susie's on with us today. So without further ado, Susie.
Great. Hi. Thank you for that introduction, Ralph. And I want to thank Ruth for her incredible leadership here in the Senior Caucus. Ruth wanted me to address a couple of things. One, I'm also a member of the Democratic National Committee, which I'll get to in a little bit. And she also wanted me to address some changes that have happened recently with the California Democratic Party and our rules regarding legislation. So 2 weekends ago, the Rules Committee adopted a rules change, which basically prevents all of us pretty much from putting forward legislative requests, basically to ask the Democratic Party to endorse legislation. In 2007, the Legislation Committee passed a rule basically stating that any Democrat could ask us to endorse or even oppose legislation. And obviously we'd want to endorse legislation from our Democratic legislators. And it's always been the case. I've been on that legislative committee for 12 years straight. We never had a problem. It was probably the most democratic of all of our different committees at the California Democratic Party. So now as it stands, registered Democrats can't just bring forward or ask us to endorse legislation. Our executive board now has been disenfranchised and also not allowed to bring forward legislation. Our regional directors, our Democratic clubs, which is where a lot of our grassroots connects with the party, also not allowed to bring forward or ask us to endorse legislation. Caucuses like the Senior Caucus, all of our caucuses at the CDP level can still bring forward legislation, but are capped at 12. Our county committees have been drastically reduced. So they get 2 pieces of legislation plus 1 per 2 ADs. So to put that in context, San Francisco, right, which is our second largest city in the state of California, can bring forward 3 pieces of legislation. So there was a concerted effort by sponsoring organizations like California Clean Money Campaign or Coalition for Economic Survival, which is one of our leading tenant rights groups in the state of California, to oppose this change. 7 elected officials signed on to a letter, including Maria Elena Durazo, Henry Stern, Bob Hertzberg, Ben Allen, Assembly members Alex Lee, Adri Nazarian, and Christina Garcia, basically saying that this would affect their constituents who would no longer be able to bring forward legislation that was authored by them or anyone else in the state of California. So what happened at the last e-board meeting, our special e-board meeting last weekend, was that we were also told that the Rules Committee has the final say, and they would not be bringing that forward to the executive board for approval. And so there are a lot of us who are pushing back on this, Democratic clubs, regional directors. And so we hope that this caucus will join in beating back these rules. I don't think we should be voting to disenfranchise ourselves. I think that when people already had a right to bring forward legislation, they should be able to retain that right. And also we have a big state and we have a lot of problems in this state. We have climate change and healthcare issues, but we also have 161,000 people who are homeless. We have an affordable housing crisis. For the San Francisco County Committee to be limited to supporting 3 pieces of legislation, I think is absolutely ridiculous. So I hope that you've now been educated on this and will help us beat this back. The other thing that I want to talk about is that our Democratic National Committee meeting is coming up next weekend, and it will start on Thursday, and it goes from Thursday to Saturday. Your delegation, elected delegation to the Democratic National Committee has been working very hard on resolutions. I put through a resolution asking for the DNC to support that all states adopt the housing first model for our unhoused community. Keith Umamoto put in a fantastic resolution on expanding Social Security. Ada Brasenio had 2 resolutions that she authored, one on misogyny and demanding equity for women, and also to legalize and give a path to citizenship for our undocumented immigrants. Will Rodriguez Kennedy wrote a resolution on forgiving student debt, and Christine Pelosi put through a resolution on Build Back Better, and that we should all be obviously supporting getting that passed. And then other resolutions by non-Californians dealt with diplomatic solutions for the Russia-Ukraine issue, supporting Ketanji Brown for Supreme Court. Let's hope that happens. And then we also are going to embark on our elections. So there are a number of councils and caucuses where leadership will be elected. I'm running for chair of the Poverty Council, which is a council that I founded a couple of years ago for the DNC. I know that Christine Pelosi is running for vice chair of the Veterans Caucus. And then there are, I'm sure, other DNC members who are planning to run for council and caucus positions. Those are the only ones that I know of now. Also, we'll be electing people to our Western Region Caucus and to the executive board. So Christine Pelosi and Gary Shea are running again to represent California on the executive board, and I believe that they're running unopposed. For our Western Regional Caucus, so many of you know that Keith Umamoto is currently our vice chair for the Western Regional Caucus. He is our highest ranking AAPI representative. He was challenged by Michael Capp for that position, and Keith graciously decided not to seek re-election after that, and is going to be, I believe, running for council chair in another council. And then Andrew Lackman will be running for an at-large position for a regional caucus. So that's essentially what's going on. There's not a lot of controversy over rules and bylaws for this particular DNC meeting. And we'll try to keep you informed as much as we can on what's going on in the outcome of our elections and our resolutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susie. Really appreciate it.
We have one question from Nadine.
Yes, I would just like to know who originally put forward the change in us being able to support legislation.
So I believe that it came from the newly appointed co-chairs of the legislative committee, and it was worked on with members of the rules committee. And so they put that in. I mean, I served on that committee for 12 years. Then there would nothing ever came up on who could submit, right? We always kind of prided ourselves on being very democratic and to have people participating from all levels, whether you're a registered Democrat and all the way up. So I was pretty shocked that they were trying to limit what we're talking about is people saying, we'd like the California Democratic Party to get behind a piece of legislation that's being brought forward by our elected officials. And the fact that they would try to limit that, to me, is unconscionable. And I have been very vocal, maybe to my detriment, but I don't care, because, we're not going to be taking away rights that people once had and saying that that's okay, and not even giving our executive board a chance to vote on that.
Right. And part of the, Susie, if I could just add on that, part of the challenge is that the clubs across the board, whether they're chartered clubs by the counties or state chartered clubs, were also able to make requests. But now those are limited to only requests by their chartering organizations. So if you're a club in Mendocino, you have to go to your Mendocino chartering organization, the Central Committee, to be included as part of their quota of, legislation recommendations.
Yeah, and if I can expand on that just a bit. So just to explain what Ralph is talking about, if I am a club, like a small club, let's say that I'm like a women's club, a Democratic club in LA County, I can't submit as my club to ask the party to endorse a piece of legislation. I have to instead go to the LA County Democratic Party, which is limited to 12. And I have to submit to them first, go through their whole process. And then after going through their whole process, if they support it, I then have to lobby them to be one of the top 12, just to be in consideration for the legislative committee, right? So I have to go through, 2 or 3 hoops there, right? Getting my own club to support it, then getting the county committee, then getting the legislative committee, just to have it go to the executive board or the convention. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. So I think one of the things people are asking what to do. So I think one of the things is that if you are part of a club, to have a letter sent to the California Democratic Party, and please CC me, opposing this rules change, and to ask for a vote on this, or I really think we just need to retract it. I think that sometimes our leaders make mistakes. Prohibition was probably a good example of that. And we realized that it didn't serve the purpose it was supposed to, and retracted. And I think we need to retract here. I think it's, like I said, it's absolutely unconscionable.
Thank you, Susie.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker. She's actually our keynote speaker. She's a woman who has been so instrumental in California politics and in moving the Democratic agenda forward. I can tell you that the first time I really heard her speak was at the CAR convention last October, I think it was. And I was so struck with what a wonderful presentation she made and what a friend of seniors she is. So I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Shirley Weber, our Secretary of State. Dr. Weber.
And good morning. I'm glad to be with all of my colleagues, my comrades, those of us who are seniors. It's great to be there with you. I'm excited about all of the work that you do and that you consistently do on our behalf. I'm honored to be really a senior, to be 73 years old, and to be the Secretary of State, which says that there's still a lot more that we have to give. And we still have a tremendous responsibility for not only what has been given to us, but what we have to give to those, the other generations. So often I am confronted with the concern that folks have. I remember when I was preparing to run for the assembly some 10 years ago, and in 2012. And one of my friends, I thought was my friend, and probably is a friend, basically said, "Aren't you a little bit too old to be running?" And she says, "I can barely get out of bed myself." And she was going on telling me all of her woes. And I thought it was kind of interesting. And I had to remind her, I said, well, you have to, are you aware of the fact that I'm an African-American woman, that we start far behind the line, and sometimes the race is longer and harder? and that we can never afford to give up because there's just too much for us to do, not only for ourselves, but for others. And so it's been interesting because I recently, when I saw her, she said, wow, you do more than young people. I said, that's because I know more than they know. I mean, I understand the threat greater than they do. And I have seen what happens when you sit down, when you decide you've done enough, when you give in and give up. And then we have to sit around and try to pick things back up and to move them forward. I said, I understand that this journey is a life journey. I told someone when I was with my kids, when they got a little bit older, and they said, oh, you're almost finished. And I said, listen, motherhood is a life sentence. You're not going to get out of this life alive without it. You're not going to get away from it. You will be a mother all of your life, either to your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your friends. That the things that you have acquired in terms of a level of sensitivity is so extremely important. I was honored when the governor asked me to consider being Secretary of State. I had not even thought about being Secretary of State. I had a wonderful career as a legislator and like most of us, thinking about retirement and figured I could count on one hand how many years I had left before I could actually retire and do what I was going to do originally, which is to build this amazing house overlooking the Volta Lake in Ghana with this land that a friend was going to give me. And I realized then, I said, well, let me think about it. And then I began to understand the challenge that we face in this nation. And the challenge my father faced 70 years ago when he came to California when he came sneaking out of Hope, Arkansas to get on a train to save his life and eventually change the life of his children. That there are many, many things that still remain. And unfortunately for us, in my generation and our generation, we thought we had conquered those monsters somewhat, that we thought we had put them away, that we had put them in cages and locked them up so that no one could ever see them again. And yet we are now faced with the same monsters again that folks faced 50, 60 years ago. We're faced with that same ugly issues of race and gender and ageism and all of those ugly things that we see. And so when I was asked to consider being Secretary of State, I thought to myself, who better to fight for this issue of democracy than a kid whose father had been denied so much during his lifetime and fought so hard to create an opportunity for himself and for his family. And so I come to this work recognizing, as I did when I did an interview, saying that our democracy is fragile. And nobody believed me on December 22nd, 2020. No one believed me when I said this democracy is fragile. But I think people believe now after January 6th that this democracy is fragile. They also realize that the democracy around the world is under attack now with Ukraine. And we can see that this world is fragile, that it continues to be very dependent upon not just the rules that are written in a book, but people to embrace it, to take it to heart, and to work hard to make it happen. And who knows better than our generation? Who knows better than those of us who have really worked hard to change the narrative and find ourselves once again having to repeat ourselves over and over again as we face the ugly monsters of this generation. I've made a commitment all of my life. I tell folks that the journey we're on is a life journey. It's not about, achieving a goal and getting there. It's a journey. It's a life journey. It is something that we will continue to work on all of our lives because it demands the kind of attention that only those who are committed can give to it. And it may get tired. You may get weary. You may get tired. You may be somehow or another exhausted from saying the same thing over and over. But I always remind myself that being tired and being given up is worse than the battle itself, because then I have to watch the destruction and I have to watch the decline. And I have to see people say things that I thought they would never say before, that I have to, at that point, realize that the world gets better when we're silent versus when we're not. And so, so I come to you as the Secretary of State, committed to make sure that things are done, that we have an opportunity. We're doing some amazing things in terms of of our businesses and making sure that those businesses, once again, and we're growing again in business, our economy is growing again, even with all the inflation and stuff that's there, there's evidence that our economy is growing and our businesses are growing. Our filings are up, those kinds of things are up. We're working with our nonprofits to make sure that they have the kind of support that they need in order to make to survive and to thrive in this particular state. Because one of the things we discovered with COVID was that so many depend upon our nonprofits. So many seniors, so many young people, so many families are dependent upon the nonprofits. But as a government, we do so much. But what stands in the gap, the additional piece that needs to be done, whether it's people coming into folks' homes with meals or caring for children, it really is filled by our nonprofits. And when they begin to shake and fall, so do our families and our communities. And so we're working to try to figure out how we can support nonprofits, but how we can also educate them on how to survive in these difficult times when something like a pandemic comes along, because we saw what happens when the pandemics come. It's those agencies that are very sophisticated, that are very large, are the ones who gobble up the resources and can survive. And yet the agencies that we're used to working with, the smaller ones, are struggling to keep their doors open because they didn't know where to file, how to get these things done. And so we're working with many of our nonprofit organizations that are designed to help nonprofits to figure out a better way. We are working very hard to make sure that our archives, that our history is important in California. And sometimes we forget that Secretary of State's office does the archives. And it's interesting because when we think about why we don't understand things and why young people don't respond to things, or why we don't respond to things, it's so often because we don't know our history. We don't know who has built this state, who's built this nation. We don't understand the legacy that has been handed to us. And so we have a responsibility to improve our archives. And so if you get on our website and look at what's happening with the archives, you will be impressed with the fact that that we have begun to expand it to women, to people of color, to those who are disabled. I mean, we're going to have we have an archive that is quite expansive and that is accessible, not just when you come to Sacramento and go to the archives, but basically online. You can basically tap into all of the material that's there. And we hope you will share in the archives so that people have a sense of who we are and where we are and how we struggle. I spent most of my academic life at the university dealing with the issues of history. And I was amazed at, with all the things that I've studied, what I still don't know. And I know that we've got a big movement to get women involved in STEM education. And then, of course, when we discover that the foundation of the hidden figures, that we discovered that the foundation of the space travel was really Black women, it shocked all of us. And I said to myself, just think what would have happened if we had known that. We wouldn't have to have these massive movements to help women of color like math and science. They would know that this is second nature to them, that they are the foundation of the greatest activities that occurred, which is our space travel. And so, but we didn't know it. And some of them were still alive. That's the thing that was so amazing to all of us, is that here was a piece of history that we didn't know. And we're out here trying to correct what we think is a problem that really wasn't a problem, that women can do math and science and do it really well. And so I say to myself, just knowing our history inspires us and would have changed the trajectory of a lot of young people if they had had the information essential. So our archives are trying to chronicle the history of everyone that's been in California, everyone that's made a difference, or even those who've had struggles in California, just to educate us about who we are so that we can obviously take advantage of the rich history and also avoid the errors of the past. But the Secretary of State also is very involved with elections. And I think most of you know that the election system in this nation is in peril, that people are challenging and questioning. We've had over 300 bills passed and offered in different states, and many of them passed to basically limit people's right to vote, to create, once again, these Jim Crow laws that you can't give somebody a drink of water in line, that you can't open polls after noon on Sundays. Because why? Because Black churches were organizing and putting folks in buses and taking them to vote in Georgia. And so now you can't, the polls can't be open after noon. I mean, all of these things to really restrict, that have absolutely no relevance whatsoever to voting, but has only relevance to those who want to limit those in terms of voting. We saw the greatest turnout in 2020 in California. I think we've had it once or twice in California's history, but over 80% of our people went to vote, over 80%. And we currently have 81, 83% of all eligible voters registered in California right now. And we're working, my staff is working hard, our outreach folks, to basically get those numbers up so that we can even have greater numbers of those who are voting in California. And you would think that with that kind of reality, that kind of participation in democracy, that people would be dancing in the streets, that they would be ecstatic about the fact that folks are voting. Isn't this wonderful? They would be just doing things. And instead, they are once again challenging. Are we sure that every person who voted was really a qualified voter? And yet they have no evidence that they weren't. Are we really sure that we should allow folks who are ex-offenders to vote? I mean, this is a challenge we face, not because people have found something wrong, but because they want to shape and define and limit the participation. Even though we know that a democracy is based on good participation, but there are those who don't believe that everyone should have the right to vote. And while we thought we had killed that monster some years ago, it is still raising its head in many, many states that are still counting ballots from 2020. I mean, and coming up with the same result over and over again. But it is once again just an attack on our democracy, an attack on those who don't believe everyone should vote. It's interesting that in California we believe we're protected, that we don't have those problems, and mainly we don't have some of those problems because we have a legislature that is not going to author those kind of crazy bills. But we do have people constantly attacking the voting in small areas. We have folks who are attacking many of our registrar voters in terms of attacking what they do and physically walking in and attacking many of our registrar voter offices, staffs, and so forth and so on. We've had to call in resources to basically stop that. We've had people telling our poll workers, I know where you live kind of conversation. And so as a result of that, people feel threatened by it. So we've had to make available our Safe at Home program for those who are working our polls to give them some level of protection. I mean, this is kind of the crazy stuff that people do. And we are working to make sure that doesn't happen. We are working with, as I know you were getting ready to have my favorite AG on, Mr. Bonta, but we're working with Mr. Bonta's office and others to make sure that people understand that anyone who attacks the polls, the voting system, who basically threatens the life of those who are trying to vote and those who are administering our voting, anyone who does that will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We will not take this as boys be boys kind of attitude. Well, we're going to make sure, because once you open up that can of worms that people feel that the folks are vulnerable, we won't find people to work in our polls. People will be afraid to go vote. And so we want to make sure that people understand that this is serious and that we're serious about it. But equally important, we have opened up, obviously, the opportunity to vote extensively. When I was chair of the elections committee, we did a number of things to make sure that voting was accessible. And as a result of COVID, which has brought a lot of things that were negative into the environment, but it also brought in some positive things. The fact that we can meet remote, but equally important that we basically did vote by mail, that people had apprehensions about what would happen if everybody got a ballot that was mailed in to them. And what we saw was that, one of our slogans is more days, more ways, that if you have more ways to vote, you're going to vote, that you can vote 11 days in advance in some counties. You can vote at home. You can vote at a ballot box. You can go into the polls themselves. You have more ways. And so we took away every excuse that people had for not voting. And they had time to think about it. They had time to participate. And what we've seen is a continued engagement in voting. And we're continuing to push that agenda. And as I close, we're also at this point registering people everywhere we go. We're running town halls across the state so people understand what the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was about, so that they understand why it's so important to fight against these rules and regulations, these draconian regulations that folks have to try to limit people's right to vote. So we're running town halls across the state concerning voting and voting opportunities that are there. We've got competition going on in our campuses. Every Cal State, every UC, And over half of our community colleges and our private institutions have a campaign, have what they call a ballot bowl, where these students are registering students and they have a competition to register students on their campuses. I was at Cal State Chico. They won the award during the recall. Cal State Fullerton won the award during the 2020 election. So our young people are engaged and involved. That's there. We're also registering high school students, because legally we can register to students from 16 to 18. We register them, we engage them, we help them to understand. And then when they become 18, we send them a letter saying, congratulations, now's your first time to vote. But in addition to that, we are also offering them the opportunity to work at the polls. And we've already sent out the notice, and we've got lots and lots of schools and school districts saying, our students want to work on the polls. We pay them, we train them, and it's a great way for them to get engaged early so that voting becomes a part of their tradition in their family. But let me say, as I try to close here, that it's my honor to be the Secretary of State. It's good that we have a senior in the leadership who can represent you. But it's also, I tell folks in addition to that no one knows better the challenges of the democracy than this group right here. We have been through the journey. We have seen the challenges. We know who the enemy is. We fought him and won occasionally. But we have the knowledge, and it is our responsibility really to share it and to transfer it, to help young people understand why this is so extremely important, what we have done over the years, and why they have the responsibility to maintain it. When I was in the assembly, I used to always say that that democracy and freedom and inclusion and justice were rare flowers. And when you have a rare flower, you have to prune it, you have to water it, you have to love it, you have to take care of it. But I say that hatred, discrimination, all the things we see are weeds, and they grow best in neglect. And so when we neglect our democracy, when we don't prune it and change and nurture it and care for it, it becomes that weed of hate, that weed of discrimination, that weed of exclusion. And we then have to go back, and we know what it is when you sleep on your garden. You know what it is when you go back outside. You've got twice as much work to do in order to get it back together. And so we have to maintain this garden of democracy. We have to work on it consistently, work to make it happen. We have to make sure that we are pruning it, caring it, and loving for it, and that we're handing to the generation, not just the democracy itself, but the legacy of care, the legacy of engagement, and the legacy that is so essential so that we continue to offer not to only our state and our communities, but to the world as an example of what a democracy is, the benefits of it, and why we struggle so hard to keep it. Thank you for having me with you this morning. I appreciate it so much. And we will continue to struggle together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. My goodness, you are inspirational. Whenever I start thinking about wanting to retire from political life, I hear you and I say, well, maybe another year or two. So thank you. Do you have time for a few questions?
I do, most definitely.
Great. So if you have a question for Dr. Weber, please raise your virtual hand and we will call on you.
My virtual hand. Okay.
Sherry, I see you. Please unmute.
Hi, Dr. Weber. It's really a pleasure to hear you. I'm wondering what we can do in California to make Election Day a state holiday and, lead the nation towards the national holiday.
We have California has offered that that bill several times, and it's gotten through some parts of the House. I think the challenge is the economic piece in terms of when you do a holiday, you have to pay for it, and so which means those who are off would be paid, and then those who could not take off because of services that have to be offered are paid 2 and 3 times more. So that the real challenge has been economic. That's number one. Number two, there's a real question now as to whether or not it's actually necessary in California because of us getting our ballot so early, having time to vote. A national holiday was designed really for those who couldn't take off from work to go vote on that specific day. When you look at the amount of time we have now in most counties, 11 days, we have Saturdays and Sundays in terms of voting. We We offered that because we had such low voter turnout. The other piece, of course, is that too often when we do a holiday like that, the persons who deserve it or need it the most are not the ones who have it available to them. Right. When you have a holiday, everyone doesn't get the holiday. Often those folks who have jobs that don't give them an opportunity to take a couple of hours off, who work long hours beyond the 5 or 6 o'clock and have other kind of responsibilities, are not the ones who get the day off. It's generally often our government workers who already get 2 hours off for personal business if they want to, and those kinds of things. So I'm not sure if it'll come back now that we've got in California, particularly now that we have the Voters Choice Act, and now we mail everybody a ballot. We probably will assess and see whether or not it would be necessary for us to do it in order to increase the participation. So that's one of the challenges. It may create more opportunities for persons to work at the polls, but keep in mind we've limited that also because we have vote centers now. And we may discover that most people are voting by mail and voting days in advance. And so it probably served a purpose some while ago. It may not now, as we've seen the number of participants increase. So I assume we will assess it. There are those who still want the holiday, but their arguments are not as strong as they used to be.
I guess we need it in Alabama where they have no early voting.
See, Alabama would never pass that, Right. Or become a federal holiday, but not a state holiday, But now that we've opened up so many opportunities for people to vote, we see the increase in participation. We even have, you can register online. You can register when you get your license. So we have not. I remember one of my friends told me that her parents never voted it was actually up in the hills of Virginia, one of the coal mining areas, because you had to register to vote at the county seat. And the county seat was only open from 9 to 4. And her parents couldn't afford to take off from work to drive into the county seat to register to vote. Well, we don't have that kind of reality in California. People can register sitting in their homes. They can register when they get their license. And so we've opened up the franchise significantly that a holiday may or may not be necessary for us. Yeah.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. Howard?
Yes, Dr. Weber, I'm a child of the 60s, and it was during that period of time when you could get killed in Vietnam but not vote. That occurred. So I was wondering about teaching people that additional history as well to encourage younger folks to vote.
Oh, no question, no question. We do that when we deal with our high schools and our college students. We've increased their voting record significantly. I can't remember the numbers, as well as their participation. I think when we were doing the voter registration, we had something like, I think during the presidential election, we had some close to 80,000 students who actually registered to vote, of those who hadn't already registered. Let's keep in mind, we allow them to register to vote when they register for classes, okay? And so it's not just on the campus alone. We have a memorandum of understanding with our CSUs, UCs, community colleges, that when students register for classes, they can click and register to vote as well. So we've opened up this franchise, and we'll continue to do that. We're working with them. We're planning a big summit for our colleges and high school students in April around the issue of voting and getting them in the practice of doing it. So we're seeing great results from that. But yes, they need to understand that as well. Yeah, that there's a responsibility, and that we worked hard because of that. I didn't get a chance to register to vote till I was 21, but I worked hard to make sure those who were 18 got a chance to vote, because the Vietnam War made it very clear that they were full citizens by the time they were 18. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and our last question comes from Michelle Krug. You need to unmute, Michelle.
Oh, thank you for the button. Dr. Weber, it's always an honor to have you in our spaces. I wanted to ask how we can best help you protect us and voting rights. I know this is obviously an issue federal all the way through the state, county, et cetera. But what can we as a caucus and as individuals do? If you can give us some asks, like in driving people to your educational opportunities, or what can we do?
Well, you know what I would really like to do, because someone talked to me the other day about it, and I'd like to get a group of you organized with my outreach group to make sure that we're doing whatever we need to do for outreach, not only with young people, but with our seniors as well. And we've got lots of folks who are volunteering, obviously, to reach out to young people, but we don't have a significant number who work reaching out to our seniors and those who may be housebound or who may not understand how to do the ballots and those kinds of things. So Janelle Jackson is my outreach person. And if you guys can shoot me a couple of names, I will that she interact. We can have a caucus that really, and we'll think of a really good name for you, because you're the caucus that has the more treads, obviously, than anybody else on their wheels, and basically understands the journey that we're on. And so, but I think we need a caucus in my office that really focuses on seniors, and that really works hard to make sure that all of our seniors take advantage of the information that we have and can help us in the various places where they are to register individuals, to make sure everyone in their facility, if they're living in a senior facility, is registered to vote, making sure that we have adequate access to all of the voting apparatus and things that we have. So I would love to have what they used to call us the Gray Panthers engaged with voting, because you guys have time and energy, but more importantly, you have knowledge, and that is and it should not be tossed away. So we've tried to use, when we do our town halls, we always use some seniors who understand what it's like, as someone just did a minute ago, to not be able to vote. Who understands what it's like, because they were either victims of Jim Crow laws, or they couldn't vote till they were 21 and they had to go to war, all those kinds of things. So we always include some historical piece in our town halls. So would love to get the name of some of you who might be interested in participating.
Thank you. What a great segue. That would be one thing that this caucus would be, I know, excited to participate in. So if anybody's interested, please email CDP Senior Caucus at gmail.com. And I will absolutely get that information to you, Dr. Weber, at your staff. And all I can say is it has been an honor and a pleasure to feature you at our caucus. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a good start to my morning. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and look forward to working with you on all these issues that are important. I appreciate you so much. Take care.
Thank you. And so AG Banta has arrived. He actually arrived just shortly after Dr. Weber started. And so
I'm ready to do it
Mr.
again.
Banta, I want to let you know that you had a wonderful introduction, but it's great to have you here.
Yeah,
So thank you
just
so
say
much for
one
being
thing,
here. And I'm
we're
sorry.
really proud of our AG, so I'm really,
Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Chair Carter, and I think I can hear you.
Rob,
My good friend Howard might be in the background, but not on mute. And wanted to say thank you for the very kind introduction that I missed. I'm sure it was generous and wonderful. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for the time today. In the California legislature, when I had the honor of serving with Dr. Weber, we all had a rule we tried to follow, which is never speak after Dr. Weber. So I'm breaking that rule now. You can see exactly why we had that rule. Nobody can measure up to the incredible wisdom and inspiration and leadership of Dr. Weber. I'm honored and proud that I came into the legislature with her, and that we now are both serving statewide, appointed by our great governor to continue to serve the people of this state. And she has my unconditional support. She was the moral conscience of our legislature when I was there, continues to be that for our state. And I can think of no one better to protect our voting rights and secure our democracy as we continue to lead nationally from California. And just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to the Senior Caucus for the opportunity to spend time today. Thank you, Chair Carter, for your leadership. I want to just tell you that I see you, I value you, I hear you, and I'm going to fight for you. And we have been. And I know that the last couple of years, especially with COVID, has been difficult. From my perspective, two of my favorite seniors, my mother and my father, they had a really hard time in isolation, not seeing their children and most of all their grandchildren. And I remember how emotional it was, how meaningful it was the first time after a year I was able to hug my mother and tell her I loved her for the first time in person, as well as for her grandkids to do the same and for her to see them. And I know we've all been through a lot. So I just want to say thank you, and I support you. There's a lot that we're doing in the California Attorney General's office. And, I see the work that I do here as an extension of what my incredible parents have done and how they inspired me. They're my biggest supporters, my biggest inspirations. I call them fierce forces for fairness. My dad marched in Selma, was part of the civil rights movement. Both worked for the United Farm Workers of America. My dad was in the front office with Cesar Chavez in the headquarters of the movement in La Paz. My mom, an immigrant from the Philippines, fought for the restoration of democracy after a dictator took power until democracy was restored. And I learned from them that everyday people focused on a common cause can do anything. And they didn't just tell me, they showed me. And it's with that spirit that I come to the Attorney General's office, wanting to always protect those who are being hurt, harmed, and abused by those who abuse their power, including our seniors who unfortunately too often suffer from elder abuse or for scams and frauds. And we will be there and have been there every step of the way, and we'll continue to stand up for our incredible seniors throughout the state of California. And we have a big agenda, as Dr. Weber laid out. There are many challenges that we're facing nationwide. And one of the things I appreciate so much about being the California Attorney General, what I see as being the people's attorney, is that we have a role, a voice in every one of those fights, whether it's fighting for reproductive freedom nationally, arguing in front of the Supreme Court in the biggest, most impactful cases, defending the Affordable Care Act and its most recent challenge to make sure that millions of Americans continue to have access to high quality healthcare, taking on our disease here in the United States of gun violence and making sure we're protecting our common sense gun laws, like our assault weapons ban, which was struck down by a judge who likened an assault weapon to a Swiss Army knife. We got a stay on that order and are fighting in court. Our assault weapons ban is still in place because of our work. We're also protecting our large capacity magazine ban, taking guns out of the hands of those who are prohibited from having them through our unique in the nation unprohibited persons system. Effort, as well as going after ghost guns and ghost gun manufacturers. We even have a bill this year that we're supporting to go after manufacturers who have had immunity nationally from any suit. And there was an important breakthrough with a Newtown case out of Connecticut that allows us to go after manufacturers and they fail to fulfill their duties to keep us safe. We're also taking on the homelessness and housing crisis with our housing strike force, making sure that all cities and local jurisdictions do their fair share to build housing, to address our common challenge and to help shape our shared future, and that we protect tenants from being evicted into homelessness. And finally, we're holding the most powerful accountable when they abuse their power, like Purdue Pharma, who helped fuel the opioid crisis, like Walmart, who got rid of hazardous materials illegally and hurt people and threatened communities. And others, including Meta, Facebook, who is peddling Instagram to children. And we know a lot of the physical and mental harms that causes. So we're working on a lot of areas. All are important to me. I had someone tell me early on in my career that you can't do it all. You got to pick a few spots and let everyone else do the rest. And I never listened to that advice, because I always thought if I fought harder, if I worked more, if I leaned in, I could help more people. Whenever there's someone who needs help, I want to be there as the California Attorney General. So I thank you for all of your work on the ground every day, driving us forward, looking out for our incredible seniors throughout the state and throughout the nation. I'm your friend and I'm your partner. I'll fight with you. I would be honored to earn your support for the California Democratic Party endorsement. I'm the only Democrat seeking the endorsement. And there is no shortage of challenges as we move forward for 40 million people in this incredible state. And I have a lot more work to do as the California Attorney General to continue fighting for you and all of our incredible friends and neighbors in the state of California. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you made it, because you have some really important things to say to us. So it's greatly appreciated. And unfortunately, we have no time for questions because we're running behind on our time. So again, thank you, AG Bonta.
Thank you, Chair Carter. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. And Dottie Smith, the Vice Chair of Central California for the Senior Caucus. Could you unmute and share now?
Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome again. My name is Dottie Smith, and I represent Fresno, the center of our Golden State. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our next three speakers, and they are candidates for state controller. These three candidates are Ron Galperin, Yvonne Yee, and Malaya Cohen. You are reminded you will each have 3 minutes to speak, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. So thank you. And at this time, Ron, oh, I'm sorry, Ruth.
Go ahead.
Go on. No, you're right.
So Ron Galperin, would you unmute, and you have 3 minutes. Ron, are you there?
Yeah. Sorry, Ruth, we have to find him in the queue and ask him to unmute. Ron, if you can hang on, we're going to find him in the queue.
He was here and now he's not here. Okay, let's move on with Yvonne. Yvonne, are you here? Could you unmute?
Yes,
please?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
Great.
great. I'm sorry that I'm currently at the airport, so I'm sorry for the background noise, but I'm ready to go.
So
Hello,
go for it.
everyone. Yeah, my name is Yvonne Yu. I'm the first generation immigrants, a mom of 3 boys, Democrats, and a candidate as state controller. And I'm also a new senior because I just turned 50 and I qualified for my City Eleni Senior Center membership. So look forward to spending more time with our senior in the future years. About my background, I have 25 years experience in finance, having managed my own investment firm with over $1 billion in assets, performed numerous audits with SEC and ASC in the state of California. Like many Californians, I'm an immigrant coming from Hong Kong at age 16, a year after my father passed away. I still cannot forget the struggle my mother has raising 3 daughters on her own. And now I'm actually my honor to also living with my mom. I'm taking good care of her. So I'm glad that during pandemic, we don't have to separate and I see her every day. As a mom and immigrants have shaped my leadership as mayor and now council member of the city of Monterey Park. Within the first few months after elected to the office, I saved the city over $55 million by refinancing our pension obligations. That to secure all our employee pension retirement plan. And that is also my priority because the people retirement is so important. So this is my priority to make sure that they are all secure. As your state controller, I would safeguard our state finances, create programs to educate people on investment in finance, especially help them to save for their retirement, and injecting the latest technology to our economy to make sure everyone earns more income, close the gap, and uplift our community. Like Betty and John Chang, who served as state controller for the last 15 years, in my opinion, they both did a good job. I did get John Chang's endorsement along with over 70 elected officials. And most importantly, I have the 25 years finance experience and knowledge to do the job. I'm a big advocate of women, immigrants, community of colors, and for those who have challenges to achieve American dreams. I look forward to meeting all of you, and it's my great honor to earn your support and endorsement as the next state controller. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today. And I see that Ron Galperin is ready to go.
Indeed, I am. Good morning, Democrats. I'm Ron Galperin. I serve as the elected controller of the city of Los Angeles. I am our city's first LGBTQ elected official citywide, also the first in my family to be born in this country. My dad was a refugee and was a Holocaust survivor, came to the United States to create a better life. And thankfully, he was able to do so along with my mom. But we know that too many others are struggling each and every single day, and especially true for our seniors. And we need a state that works for everyone. And that's why I'm running. The past 2 years, as we know, have been really tough. and notably again for seniors with economic and food and housing insecurity, inadequate access to medical care, deep racial inequalities, an environment and a climate in peril. Also, as the father of young twins, I want to see a sustainable planet Earth for them to be able to grow up in for generations to come. And how do we address these challenges? Well, we do so with better public policy and clear priorities, and with budgeting and spending that truly reflect our values. And the job of the controller is to make sure that that spending is transparent, it's accountable, and it's effective. A job that I know very well, having done for the largest city in California, but I want to do it for every community, large and small. And I'm proud to have revolutionized the office. As a matter of fact, if you go to lacontroller.org, you will find unprecedented transparency, a virtual checkbook of the city, every dollar that we've spent, open data, dashboards, audits, tools. But these are tools to track things. More importantly, even, is advocacy that I have engaged in to make government more responsive and more truly progressive. I launched a comprehensive COVID-19 resource hub to connect people with resources, including a lot of resources specifically for older adults. Also, the first ever equity index that actually measures a whole variety of metrics relating to equity so that we can look at how do we distribute resources in a better way. And I want to do this for the state. And I want to say that I am ready to do this job on day one. And among my priorities is, first of all, protecting retirement security. And Social Security, as we know, is sacred. And I will address the mounting cost of healthcare and long-term care for families. And there's a great deal of power that the controller has as not only the chief financial officer of the state, but also serving on 78 boards and commissions that have a tremendous impact on every aspect of our lives, including, by the way, our pension funds. And I am now, as controller for the city of LA, I have a role with our 3 pension funds. I understand these very well and how it is that we can make sure that they are secure and that we maintain these benefits well into the future. I'm very proud to say I'm the only candidate in this race that is actually a controller, the only candidate that has the support of both Betty Yee and John Chung, both our current controller and our past controller. I'm supported by Planned Parenthood, Equality California, labor, elected officials throughout our state. And I would be grateful for your consideration as to be your next state controller, especially as we approach our vote tomorrow at the endorsing convention. So thank you very much. Check out ronforcalifornia.com, all spelled out. And I look forward to continuing to work with you well years into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Galperin. It looks like Malia Cohen is not here yet. So we're going to move. I'm sorry.
She should be on just a second. She's logging. She's having a little issue with the link, but I'm getting her on.
Okay. Well, we'll wait 1 minute. Thank you, Joe.
Good to see everyone.
Okay, well, we still have another group of candidates to go through, so we're going to move on. So Val, how about you starting on with our next group?
Right.
Val, who is our Vice Chair for Northern California.
I'm Val Mahowski, Vice Chair for Northern California, and we're about to hear from the candidates for the Insurance Commissioner. Each candidate will have 3 minutes. We'll start with Mark Levine, who is an Assembly member, and then Ricardo Lara, who is our current Insurance Commissioner. Okay.
Well,
Are we ready to go?
Yeah, thank you so much, Val and Ruth. You guys run a tight ship. This is exactly when you told me I'd be speaking. I'm Assembly Member Mark Levine. I've been representing Marin and Sonoma County in the state legislature for the past decade, since 2012. And in that time, seniors have really led in my legislative work. The very first bill I ever presented was to make sure that prescription medication says on the bottle exactly what the side effects would be for you. And that was brought to me by the senior legislature. More recently, I did legislation to make sure that if you want to age in place, that you do not need to pay permit fees for things to make your home safer for you. And I know that many of you care about healthcare, as do I. I proudly voted for AB 1400 in the Appropriations Committee. Your fight for healthcare is not something that you do alone, and I'm proud to be endorsed by the California Nurses Association. I'm a father of a son with epilepsy and a son of a father with Parkinson's. And just yesterday, my mother called me about how the nurse that visits their home began the conversation about hospice care. So we are in this fight together for all Californians. And that informs my work this year. I passed legislation through the Assembly, it's now in the Senate, to make sure that people on Medi-Cal have the same right to independent medical review that people on private insurance have. So this is very important to make sure that if you're on Medi-Cal, that you've got all of the rights. And as we move to single payer, to make sure that we're making it something strong where people can be advocates for their own health care. I'm running for insurance commissioner because we are all being squeezed by the insurance industry. I've heard from constituents up and down the state about how they're being canceled and non-renewed by their insurers, essentially paying thousands of dollars a year over years or decades, essentially a whole nest egg, that when they're canceled and non-renewed, it feels like they've been robbed, that the home that they thought that they would retire in suddenly isn't protected, or they're forced onto the FAIR plan, which is what the current insurance commissioner is asking people to do because he doesn't have any other solutions, which is very expensive and pays out very low in benefits. Who does that benefit? That benefits the insurance industry that collects the higher premiums and pays out less to you if you suffer a loss. Why is there a lack of leadership in this space? Because not since disgraced Republican Insurance Commissioner Chuck Quackenbush resigned because of a scandal involving his contributions from the industry, has an insurance commissioner taken money from the industry, until Ricardo Lara got caught not once, but twice. The second time laundering the contributions through the spouses of insurance company executives that he met with multiple times, and then intervened with his staff multiple times to benefit them and not protect Californians. He's in court this morning, his lawyers, to block his own staff from providing testimony that can shed more light on this pay-to-play scandal. So I'm rolling up my sleeves. Last year, I introduced legislation to strengthen our insurance marketplace, encourage more carriers to be in this space, to bring down costs, and make sure that people who harden their homes and harden their communities can recognize the benefits of that investment. Everyone says it makes your home safer, yet Ricardo Lara does not want to push a policy that guarantees issuance of home insurance for people. He will not guarantee that that work provides discounts for people. And if you're a senior, if you're disabled, if you're on a limited income, there should be grants to you to make sure that you can protect your home and protect your community. And if insurance companies are going to say that they can't insure us because of climate risk, I will hold them accountable and say that insurance companies must disclose their investments and their underwriting in fossil fuels. Insurance Commissioner Dave Jones, who's a mentor of mine, he did that for investments. We're going to push this further to make sure that it also covers their underwriting. How can they say that they can't insure us, but that they're insuring the fossil fuel industry? They can't make profits on one side and then say they can't protect us when they themselves are exacerbating this. So I'm asking you, we can put an end to the scandals. We can say that the Democratic Party is not captive to this corruption. We can be a positive force for good. And tomorrow, during the endorsement vote, I ask for your support. We can have progressive leadership leading and holding the insurance industry accountable for a change and put people before profit. Thank you so much. Really nice to be with you this morning.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
And moving on, let's the current Commissioner of Insurance, Ricardo Lara. I've been told is here. I don't see him.
Ruth, how are you?
Oh, there you are. Okay. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be brief. Good morning, everyone. I'm proudly here before you today as California's first ever LGBTQ statewide elected official, and I'm also the first Latino insurance commissioner, and I'm proud to be running for re-election. And as Democrats, we know that representation matters, and our leaders must come from our diverse community. Breaking down barriers can sometimes elicit politically motivated attacks and lies, and I'm here instead I'm going to spend my time actually talking about what I've done as insurance commissioner. I've taken on the insurance industry, resulting in over $2 billion directly back to you, to consumers' pockets. I was the first insurance commissioner in the country to order insurance companies to provide premium reimbursements to California drivers and to our businesses. To address climate change, I created the first ever climate insurance working group made up of environmental leaders to work with me on ongoing wildfire threats, sea level rise, and extreme heat. I protected wildfire victims from being dropped from their homeowners insurance, providing protection to more than 2.4 million households. And I recently just announced a year-long effort with other state agencies to issue our Safer from Wildfire Insurance Framework, which will save lives. And now I've created regulations mandating insurance companies to use this framework to give wildfire safety discounts to consumers who harden their home, businesses, and their communities. So when you do the work, you should see a reward. And although it stalled in the assembly, I remain committed to single-payer healthcare, which is personal to me. I grew up without healthcare with 2 immigrant parents. And as you know, I proudly authored SB 562, which I was able to successfully get out of the Senate, and it was killed in the assembly. And I also authored Health for All Kids, extending healthcare, which by the way, now we've extended it to all immigrant adults. But I'm proud to say that over 100,000 undocumented children now have healthcare. And this year, I also authored, as my parents, now as my caretaker to my parents, authored a bill and signed into law to make sure that just like people with dependent children, that if you have dependent adults, we can actually put you in your health and in our health plan, so that one family had under one health plan, bring down the cost of healthcare until we get to single payer. And I'm proud to have the endorsement of our California firefighters, our California environmental voters, Nurses Association, SEIU, CTA, NARAL, and Planned Parenthood. Again, you know my progressive values. I will continue fighting alongside you, no matter who's attacking me or what their political agenda is. And I humbly ask for your support and vote once again for my re-election. Thank you all for everything that you do, and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you so much for being with us. And Malia Cohen, who is a candidate for state controller, has joined us now. So Malia, time for you for your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Seniors Caucus. I'm delighted to be here. You heard, my name is Malia Cohen, and I just want to acknowledge how much I know I relied on my grandmother when I was growing up, and how much I rely on my mother's help when I'm raising my daughter. So I apologize for being late this morning. I was handling the baby in the bathtub. There's a couple of things that I want to share with you today. You have an opportunity to elect and endorse, and then ultimately elect a new Democrat and to be controller. And it's very, very clear that Betty Yee has made a dual endorsement. And I think at this point, we should be having a conversation about who represents your interests. I represent 23 counties, 10 million people on the Board of Equalization. But in my capacity in San Francisco, I did a lot of work around the senior community, ensuring that there was an allocated revenue source that directly goes into seniors, ensuring that they have the ability to age in place, that they have wraparound services, that there's transportation to get them to and from their appointments. And this was something that was very important. I went to voters to get this initiative passed. And this is an unobstructed revenue source that the Department of Adult Aging will be managing from now and into perpetuity. And I just use this as an example of the work that I've done and my dedication and commitment to the issues that are important to this caucus. With that said, I've been also endorsed by a number of our allies, CNA, the teachers, SEIU. I've got endorsements from 11 regional directors, 15 out of 20 caucus chairs, including you, Ms. Ruth Carter. Thank you. And then also 15 county chairs. It's been an incredible journey to get to this point, but I do believe I'm the strongest, most viable candidate in this race for state controller. I support you and I support AB 2145, and I would love to have your vote on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great day, and I hope your daughter's not still in the bathtub.
Thank you.
And so I have also been requested by the, I'm going to start sharing my screen in a minute. So please bear with me while I do that. Okay.
On April 12th of 2016, we walked into Cedars-Sinai Hospital, what we expected to be the happiest day of our lives, and ended up walking straight into a nightmare. Right after the delivery, we're taken back to recovery, and I began to notice blood in Kira's catheter. This is a tragedy that no family should ever have to face. Although we can't bring Kira back, it's so important that we fight to make sure that we protect the rights of other families of injured patients. Right here in California, we have a set of outdated laws that have been in place since 1975 that limit the amounts that are recoverable in instances of medical negligence. Not only does it cap the value of human life at $250,000, it stands in the way of justice and accountability.
So I was requested to show that video because there has been a lot of communication from opponents to this bill, not the least of which was a hit piece that went into those of you who are delegates, that went into our swag bag. But if you look closely at the swag bag, you can see who sponsored that flyer. So that's why I'm showing that. That's why I showed that video. And Sandra Lowe put the connection, the link in the chat so that you want to learn more about it, you can do that. Thanks, Sandra. Not last, but almost last, I'm going to have Michelle Krug. Could you unmute and tell us what it is you are talking about now? Michelle?
Thank you very much for that button, Ruth. It really does make a difference for me. Good morning, Senior Caucus. Just very briefly, I know that our president is going to put in the chat a website for union busting at sequan.org. Unite Here has been fighting a battle since 2019 that the workers at Sequan Casino are trying to organize into a union, and Sequan's response has been to hire an anti-labor consultant that has been doing threatening one-on-one meetings with the workers. So please check this out. This is an ongoing battle that you will hear more about. The ask is to support the workers. The ask is to ask the Democratic Party to stop taking money from Sequan until they mend their ways and are not supporting this anti-worker company at this time. And lastly, there will be some sports betting propositions that are upcoming or seem proposed for our ballot. And we would like the party not to take a position until there are worker protections in those. At this moment, there's none. So please check out Union busting. Thank you. Union busting at sequan.org. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle. So almost last, Ralph has an announcement to make. Ralph is our emeritus officer. So Ralph?
Yes, we have a position open for the communications officer, and we had no candidates put their names in the ring prior to the meeting. So we are taking nominations off the floor. If there's anyone who is interested in taking on this valuable and invaluable role with our caucus, we'd love to have you. So if anybody would like to participate and run for communications officer, the voting is open. Nadine, is that a?
No,
running?
it's just, I don't have the skills, but I think it would be good if you listed the skills and the expectations for people to know. So if we know somebody, we can encourage them.
We'll repost that on our in our next newsletter. We did put the position in the newsletter the last couple of times, so we'll do that again. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody want to take on a valuable role here?
Join our team.
Join our team. Okay. Ruth, I think we have no takers.
I get it. So we'll, Nadine, I'll be in touch with you and let you know what's needed so that you can do some outreach. That'd be great. And so last but not least, I want to tell you about upcoming on April 9th, we'll start at 11. We're going to have another Senior Caucus meeting, and we will be focusing on local races. We'll also have some more information about HR 5273, which is Social Security 2100, which is an incredible bill and so important to us as seniors. It will protect Social Security ad infinitum and add all the things that are, and it's so many of the things that are missing now. So look for that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Vice Chair for Southern California, who is going to share with you what we generally do at the end of our meetings. He's going to share a song with you that is so perfect for this time. So, Dr. Bill?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good. That's rather essential. And thanks to everyone. What a terrific caucus meeting this has been. And before I share this song with you, I just did want to call attention. Pardon?
What's the music?
The music. Yes, it's the song "Imagine" by John Lennon.
Okay.
And so I did pop in the chat some COVID stats, and you know, I do want to recognize both the victims of COVID, and as seniors, we certainly have recognized, as AG Bonta pointed out and Secretary Weber pointed out, that as seniors, we've been so really victimized by this pandemic as seniors, and as have other immunocompromised people, and especially all of our communities of color across the state. And that's, I believe, because we do not have universal health care in this state or in this country. And as we saw in this battle over the recent bill, AB 1400, we have far too many defenders of the status quo. So I want to dedicate this song to all of you who are working to advocate for those folks who are challenging those defenders of the status quo in the work that you're doing in the upcoming midterms. And also, I'd like to dedicate this song to all of the unwitting victims of the conflict in Ukraine, and absolutely our hearts are with those, and call to remove all military in that area, and immediate ceasefire and a call for peace in the region. So with that, we will go to the song, which probably nobody here needs the lyric sheets for except me, but I will go ahead. All right, well, thank you. Imagine there's no heaven, easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country, isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Perhaps someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possession, wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the food. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Perhaps someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. There you have it.